It's an absolute pleasure to welcome football legend John Salako to the From the Club podcast. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Lovely to be on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, John. We really appreciate it. John, tell us everything we need to know about you in 60 seconds.
Oh, grew up in Westerham, schooled in Sevenoaks. Joined Crystal Palace at 16 as an apprentice, pro at 17. Yeah, FA Cup final 1990, and then made my England debut 22. Going on to get 5 caps, played till I was 36, 600 games, 45 goals. Went on to work for Sky for 10, 12 years as a pundit, presenter. Now out in the real world, coached Crystal Palace first team
Yeah.
for one season in 15-16 season. So, and then, yeah, loving life.
Well, you've packed a lot in, John, haven't you? I'm looking forward to unpacking that all over the next few minutes. But take us back to the beginning. What age did you start kicking a ball? When did you realise that you were really good?
Well, do you know what? I wanted to play from as long as I can remember. And I can remember trying to join in with my brothers. They're a little bit older than me. I think Paul's 4 years older and David's 5.5 years older. So, sort of trying to join in with them was probably not a great idea. I think I actually sort of joined in a game and got knocked out once, and then I stopped playing. But what they used to do is they put me in goal, so I was the one that used to go in goal, and they used to hammer balls at me, which was great. Look, I just wanted to be involved. So I just have always, as long as I can remember, just loved football.
And one of your older brothers, he actually played, didn't he? Was it at Welling that he had a bit of a career?
Yeah, so David was a goalkeeper. He
Yeah.
had trouble with Millwall. Paul was a centre forward, and he was probably arguably the most athletic and out of all of us, and he was really fast. And he was a centre forward. I got him trials at Palace, but he just, it wasn't for him, and it's really weird. And my younger brother Andrew, he was actually an apprentice and a pro at Charlton. So he was a pro for 2 years. I think, yeah, he played for the first team. Got into the squad and played. Um, and again, he ended up moving on, playing a lot of non-league. I think Welling,
Yeah.
Bromley, Sutton. He was at Sutton for a while. Sort of did a lot of the non-league circuit, and he's an accountant now. So again, it's really weird how I think you've got to have a clash. You've got to have a balance of physicality, talent, and a mentality to want to do it and be able to stick with it. Because I think a lot of players will find that environment very intimidating. It's very harsh. It's very brutal. I always call it cutthroat and ruthless. And those dressing rooms when you have sort of 25, 30 blokes, or say, yeah, in a dressing room, even in non-league, you may only have sort of 16, 18 people in a squad, but it's fierce and it's competitive and everyone wants to play and everyone wants to earn their money. And sometimes it's a little bit more brutal at that level because,
Yeah.
it's mortgages and, it's a little
Yeah.
bit harsher. And sometimes when kids have been in academies, at your Chelseas and Liverpools and Man Uniteds and Arsenals and Tottenhams, and then they come down, they get released from there, and then they come into the real world of, non-league. They end up sort of going straight out the game because they just can't cope because it is a
Yeah.
bit pampered the higher
Yeah.
up you are, and the reality of non-league is is an eye opener.
Yeah, it's really funny actually because I remember you saying that your older brothers put you in goal, and obviously you mentioned that your brother turned into a goalkeeper. So there you are doing a swap because you turned into this really skillful winger, didn't you? So when did that transition happen? When did your brother end up going in goal? When did you go out on pitch, and how did you end up getting scouted as well? Who ended up picking you up?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I lived in a little village called Westerham near Sevenoaks, Churchillian country. Chartwell is just up the road in Hever Castle. But I was playing under 14s. I was scoring a lot of goals, and the manager of the under 15s came over and he said, "Look, this is too easy for you. You need to come and step up and play for us." So I thought, great. So I went up and stepped up a year up and was still scoring a lot of goals. And he was the one, a guy called John Mitchell, bless him. He wrote to Crystal Palace as you did back then. There was no real scouting and there was no real pathway. And, really, we didn't dare to dream about being footballers or being a singer or being an actor or like it is now. It's just crazy. You didn't even dare to dream that. It was, we wanted to be estate agents and in the army, and I wanted to be in the RAF. And he wrote to Palace. They sent down a scout, a guy called Gilbert Honey Jones, and he came down. He invited me for a trial. Went for a trial up at Netherland Hospital. There must have been about, God, 30, 40 kids up there on a wet cold evening, and I think out of us two, myself and Richard Shaw were identified and
Oh,
was
yeah.
invited
Wow.
to go train at Mitcham. Mitcham, which was a 2 hour journey minimum each way from Westerham, which I had to do. So yeah, and they asked me to train, and before I knew it, they offered me schoolboy forms, and I was sort of signing apprentice at 16. But
Yeah.
you did ask me that question. It was sort of, I don't know. I suppose it was really weird. I played Kent schools cricket, and when I went to Kent schools cricket, I used to look at the other lads, some of the other lads, and think, "Oh, these lads are really good. They're a lot better than me." But when I went to football, when I turned up at Mitcham and went training, I was like, "Okay, yeah, I've I'm one of the better ones." And if not, you think arguably, right up there, and felt very
Yeah.
comfortable all along, and certainly going into into apprenticeship. At Palace, we didn't have a great side, and we dismantled the reserve side. We used to get people in from Carshalton and Dulwich Hamlet, and from Sutton would make up the reserve side with a few bits of youth. So I was playing reserve team football at 16, 17. Ended up making my debut at 17, but so I was on that pathway of, you grew up very quickly and you grew up
Yeah.
young. I think there is a classic saying, if you're good and strong enough, then age doesn't really come into it. So if you are a Yamal playing in the European Championships, playing for Barcelona at 16, that it's just, you've got it,
Yeah.
you've got it. Wayne Rooney was playing at a very early age. So I hate that, when in youth and academy football, they sort of pigeonhole these kids and sort of try and hold them back. But if they're ready, you sort of push them on. And
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
I've hated this under 23 football, because that's kind of pampered everyone and kind of closeted, and kids aren't looking to break through straight away. Where we were thrown, 16 to 18 was youth team.
Yeah.
And then you played reserve team football. You went and played men's football, and you were thinking about playing men's football at 17, 18. And that's what you need.
Yeah.
But I think at the moment, sort of the age thing is kind of changed. I speak to kids now, and they're not really thinking about playing in the first team or men's football at 16, 17, 18, and I don't get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, mate, that was a special day for Palace, wasn't it? Unearthing both you and Richard Shaw on one day, two massive Palace legends. Incredible.
And the group underneath was Gareth Southgate, Ricky Newman, Simon Osborne, Simon Roger. So
Wow.
yeah, good
Yeah.
few years under Alan Smith. Yeah. Sort of, yeah, a real purple patch of where there was a lot of players came in, and then underneath that was people like, yeah, Dean Gordon.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, wow, yeah, there was Bobby Bowery. There was a real good players. But do you know what? We used to identify players from non-league, and they used to come in, and we'd sign a few from there, and but then we'd get all the local kids come in, and it's changed so much. And as much as we've got this fabulous world-class academy now, up at Copers Cope, I'm not sure the scouting, because when I was under 13s coach at Palace, my assistant was a guy called Joe Shields, and he went on to be the lead scout for Man City, world scout, if not in UK. And he was at Chelsea. He was at Southampton, now he's at Chelsea. But incredible coach. But I used to look at all the other, a lot of the best players on all the other sides were always from our area. Such a rich catchment area, South London, and that's one thing that Palace need to work out
Yeah.
is
Yeah. For sure.
retaining players and getting players to come in, because we can't go out and spend 50, 60, 70 million pound on £1 million players. So
Yeah.
that's going to be important.
What do you remember about your childhood? I was in preparation for today. I was listening to a few of your other podcasts, and I was surprised to hear that you didn't actually go to your first football match until you was actually 14 years old. Although you was playing lots of football, you didn't watch it. Tell us about that, John.
Yeah, so I was council house kid living in a little village in Westerham. My dad died when I was 5, so my mum had 5 kids, working 3 jobs. You know, there wasn't really that. You had jobs to do, and I mean, although I played football for school, then I'd join in Westerham men's, and then you'd play on a Sunday again. So you'd probably play in 3 games of a weekend. So that was my life. And I think, during the week, I would do everything sporting wise, athletics, cricket, rugby, football. Um, so there wasn't anyone really to take me to football.
Yeah.
So the first game I ever went to see was Arsenal versus Sunderland at Highbury, and that was a school trip, sort of going there. And funny enough, Alan Sunderland scored the winner for Arsenal against Sunderland. So it was very memorable, and that's why I'm a bit of a gooner, if
Yeah.
anything. Arsenal's very close to my heart. Ever since then, really, and
Yeah.
they had a great side with Liam Brady back in the day, and then going on to obviously Charlie Nicholas and those Niall Quinn, and then the Galacticos of the Henry's, Bergkamp's, Wrights,
Yeah.
Overmars, Vieira.
Yeah.
Great side, and and obviously, um, so yeah, when I was a kid, I don't even, I had a Liverpool bag. To Liverpool winning the championship, every kid wants to be popular and fit in, but I think my eldest brother was Liverpool, uh, then Paul was Tottenham. So whenever we watched football, I didn't really have a team growing up, and obviously from 14, it was sort of Arsenal was a bit special because obviously it was the first place I ever went.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the iconic Arsenal side, and of course, you spent 9 years at Palace, and you was a part of one of the most iconic Palace sides ever. As you look back, John, what does Crystal Palace as a club mean to you?
It's home. Palace is family. It's home. So I joined it probably just before my 14th birthday. Went through the whole process of youth team, reserve team, first team. And then, it's been incredible, really, the journey of coming back and coaching the under 13s, coaching the under 16s, and then coaching the first team in 15-16 season. And funny enough, getting back to Wembley. So, you know, 1990, it was the cup final that went to a replay with the iconic Palace side of, Nigel Martin, Jeff Thomas, Andy Gray and Mark Bright, Eddie McGoldrick, and obviously, Alan Pardew with his winner at Villa Park. That's got to be, that's such an iconic moment that would just be
Yeah.
incredible because Liverpool had I think they'd won the title 7 or 8 times in the 80s. They were so dominant. It was incredible. And I often, I still speak to Sir Alex Ferguson because it was the sliding doors moment of, if we beat in Liverpool in that semi-final, and then if we had beaten Man United and we were 6 minutes from beating them in the final, Sir Alex Ferguson would have got the sack and everything would have been different. But Mark Hughes equalises. We go to the replay. Lee Martin, bless him, heartbreak for us in the replay on the Thursday. And I just wish it could have all been over on the Saturday. Just extra
Yeah.
time ends, whatever would have happened. Um, and Sir Alex Ferguson goes on to be the greatest manager that
Yeah.
we've had in the Premier League and arguably of all time. But Brian Clough might have something to say about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But and obviously some of the older boys. But yeah, do you know what? I mean, the Palace has just been so special. We won we finished third in the top flight um in 91 and won the Zenith Data Systems at Wembley when we beat Everton 4-1. Again, they had, Ratcliffe, Mountfield, Gary Stevens, Trevor Stevens, they had top players.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, really, how well we did that season. It was just such a shame that, at the end of that season, Leeds finished fourth. We finished third. Ian Wright went to Ron Nodes, said, right, we strengthening the team. He said, I don't think we need to bring anyone in. He said, well, look, Arsenal knocking on the door. I think I might pop over to them. So it was like really JFK or getting shot. Elvis dying. You remember when, the day when you heard the news, Ian
Yeah.
Wright had left and gone to Arsenal for 2.5 million. It was heartbreaking, but absolutely made up for, brilliant. He just went on because he's a superstar. He was one of those players that came and you could just see him grow from
Yeah.
this rough ragamuffin, scruffy, swearing, kid off the street, just loving football, just training every day as if all his dreams had come true and all his birthdays had happened in one day. And that was right all over. He just came in every day with this exuberance and just an enthusiasm and a passion that just, swept us all along. And we used to go out and play and watch football, and he was the heartbeat of that side. But you had a bunch of really young, enthusiastic, passionate guys that and talented guys that, we just all we worked off each other. And that was where it was. And then obviously we had the next side, obviously Brighty Righty. Righty leaving was the catalyst, Brighty left. And obviously people like Jeff Thomas and Andy Gray moved on. And then there was the new side. Alan Smith created a new side under Gareth Southgate. So Chris Armstrong, Chris Coleman, Richard Shaw, Dean Gordon, Ricky Newman, David White, and we won the championship and came up into the Premier League. And that's how I got to the semi-final of the FA Cup and the League Cup in the same season, which is incredible. And then we got relegated on 47 points when we were the fourth team. They reduced the Premier League, or that was the year before they reduced to start the Premier League. Can you imagine? I mean, 47 points now would finish top
Yeah,
half of the table.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah,
So that was heartbreaking. I mean, that was, and I got to a point where really I just thought I needed a new challenge. So, that was, yeah. So I moved on to Coventry, yeah, but Palace, yes, at 14 to 26. So yeah, Palace is home, Palace is family. I still do all the home games as a match day ambassador. I'd love to be more involved and do more, as we go forward and see the club grow and take it forward. It's just that next step. Unfortunately, it looks like will lose Eze, Elise, maybe Gay, but we rebuild and we go again. Build the stadium, the infrastructure needs upgrading. So it'd be lovely to, over the next sort of couple of decades, see Palace really cement in the status in the Premier League and move forward as a club.
yeah. Well, there's so much gold in there, John, that you've just covered, and we're going to pick up on a few of those bits in a minute. But I want to pick up on one thing because obviously you've been blessed. You've gone on and had a really successful second career after football. But how do you replace the emotion of the game? Because I mean, you've been there. You've had tens of thousands of fans, adoring you and cheering your name and really loving you. And then obviously, you finish your career and it's all over. How do you go about replacing that? Is it even possible? How do you cope with that kind of situation?
Oh, great question. I think in a lot of ways, I think for a lot of players and I think myself, I think what you do is you bury yourself in something else. You just get busy. I went straight into Sky Sports. And to be fair, what did replace that was actually going and covering live games and doing live television. It's been in the studio with Jeff Stelling and Charlie
Yeah,
Nicholas
yeah,
and obviously and the boys and Matt Letizia and Merce and obviously when you go to the games, you've got the anticipation, you've got the crowd and you get in there and you're getting ready for the game and you sort of feel you're part of it and you see the lads before the game, you speak to them and you're in that press corps, and if you've got to do some live links before, that really gets the adrenaline flowing. So I suppose that really did fill the gap, really, and I think that took away, and during the week you're doing your research, you're watching games, you're going to games, you're scouting, you're doing a bit of coaching. And when you first stop playing, it's kind of like a little bit of a relief because you're kind of mentally drained, you're tired from
mm,
training every day, playing, and you're old. I was 36, I was taking anti-inflams to train. You got youngsters running around, strong, fast, aggressive, and you kind of there is a bit of relief.
yeah,
And then you miss it. You'll never replace that. I mean, the one thing I love the camaraderie and the banter of training. And I love, that sort of, the whole discipline and going in every day and thinking of what you were trying to achieve, and then just looking forward to games. But the games were
yeah,
the real pinnacle. Just yeah, I just loved, sort of getting ready and preparing for games and playing in those big matches was so special. And in a way, I think you look back and you do have a little bit of depression. You do have a little bit of a you'll always be missing something. Something will always not quite be there. And for me as well, I think the worst thing was that, I went on to, my knees were just, bad in hips, ankles, back, and you just can't really play anymore. And I think if I could still
mm,
play a bit of five-a-side and run around in a charity game every now and then and do a bit of training, I think that helps as well. but not being able to do that, I think has been tough. That is really, I think that's harsh. I think
Yeah,
you look at a lot of people like golfers and sort of cricketers and musicians. They can play till they're 60, 70,
yeah,
and whether it's in pro-ams or just sort of charity days. But with football, it's so physical and
yeah,
athletic, and thinking about running around, and then something just breaks anyway. You either pull a
yeah,
hamstring or a calf pops or a
yeah,
groin goes. It is a little bit depressing, I think, from that point. But see, but you just find other things. I mean, I love my golf, tennis, and cycling. I got into cycling with Jeff Thomas, who, as I say, obviously he got diagnosed with leukemia and survived. He's just been incredible. So I've done London to Paris with Jeff 4 times. I'd like to do some more actually. I've always wanted to do a Tour de France, but not sure that's going to happen. The training, I mean, that's 23 days. That's like
yeah.
two, two and a half. That's 2,500 miles or something through mountains, and I'd like to do a couple of the stages at some, sort of train and do that. So I think you try and keep that discipline of
Yeah.
working out, of getting something to fill that void of, sort
Yeah.
of mentally focusing on something. So yeah, golf and cycling and a bit of tennis.
You mentioned obviously the fitness as you get older, and I remember you picked up a really bad knock. I think it was against Leeds, didn't you, as a Palace player? When you get a bad injury like that, John, do you ever fully recover? And also, when you obviously play games after, are you always trying to almost like protect it by changing the way that you run? And is it an injury that even impacts you today? Do you still have sort of side effects from that now?
I mean that was crazy because I can remember came back pre-season and I think the first game was cancelled. It might have been Arsenal away, or Arsenal at home. I forget why it was cancelled. And the first game was Man City away, and I can remember, Gary Megson has snapped me in art. He's tackled the ball with one foot and snapped me with the other foot, and he snapped my knee straight. And I can remember going back, and our physio department was shocking. There was nothing. And I didn't go for an MRI scan. I didn't go and see a specialist. The physio just decided it was a knock. I was fine. I iced it for a couple of weeks. Swelling went down. And then I went into the Leeds game. I went into the Leeds game and I went up for a header. Mel Sterling at the far post rose above him. And as I came down, I landed. And what your anterior cruciate does, it stops your knee bending the wrong way. So your knee bends the right way. And
Wow.
mine was loose. So it hyperextended and absolutely just ripped everything out. So instead of having a minor repair, a little bit, a tidy up and a minor repair on the cruciate, it ended up just ripping everything out and just absolutely blowing the knee and turned into a horrific injury that they just said, you're done, your career's over. Luckily, Steve Coppell was manager, and he'd obviously finished through knee injuries at a young age of 28. And he went scouring and made an effort to look around the world and say, well, where are the best surgeons? And we actually identified that Ian Durant had been to America and he was back playing, but he'd had initially it was a what was it called, a carbon graphite, insert into his to replace his cruciate, but that had not worked. But then he'd had a bone patella bone, and he was back playing. So it'd taken 2 goes, but he was playing. So we identified that Sweden and America were the best places, but America, we sort because they're their private medical system, and because of the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL, they do see a lot of injuries. So I went to see a guy called Dominic Sisto in Van Nuys in West Hollywood, and we did actually have another surgeon booked in Nevada. But when I spoke to this surgeon, I just felt so confident in him. I said, I want you to do it, and actually did it on a Saturday in around 3 o'clock. Um, and it felt great. I mean, it was fantastic. I came back, I rehabbed, and I really was, I was motivated. I was like, no, this is fine. I know I've been told I won't play again, but I was like really strong, and I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm going to be back. And I did. I got back 10 months back playing. I mean, it's devastating. The first 3, 4 months, you can't even run. You're just watching the lads
Yeah.
train to play. And then you just get your head around it and get it done. And then I was back playing. I was back in the England squad, looking forward to, sort of looking forward to, because the first time round, I was looking forward to the Euros in Sweden in 92. So by the time I got back to the England squad, then it was USA 94. And then, yeah, and then I was actually going to I was going to move to Bari. My agent rang me and said, look, David Platt was there, Des Walker was there. And they said they're looking for a wide player and you've been identified, and I was going to move there. And and then the knee went again. Um,
Yeah.
and then I was and that was real devastating. That was that was the hardest bit. And ended up back in West Hollywood on Van Nuys with Mr. Sisto. And we did it again, because the first one was a donor Achilles tendon. I remember it being big news, splash donor, because the one thing you do have in America or in LA is a lot of shootings, and so there's a lot of young donors, unfortunately, that get caught up in gang crime and drugs and get killed on. So the Achilles tendon is the strongest tendon in the body. So they try to, he gave me one of those, but we didn't. I don't know whether it stretched out or it just didn't take or whatever it was. I personally just think it needed 2 goes. I think there was so much
Yeah.
trauma and damage in the first instance. It needed the second go, and the second one was bone patella bone, and yeah, came back and again 10 months rehab. But that was a real low point, and that was really tough. But yeah, got back and carried on playing. But yeah, you're never the same. You're never as quick. Other things compensate, and start getting hamstrings, groins. And that was devastating, really, not to have the speed or the agility you had, not being the same player. So I think, really from the age of 24, 25, you were sort of working ridiculously hard to stand still. It was not getting better. It was
Yeah.
just trying to retain and get somewhere near where you were, which was frustrating. And that in itself was brain damage. But, you take the small mercies and you look at the positives of I'm playing and it could be finished, it could be washed up. And then, it sort of goes on. I had 3 good years enjoyable years at Coventry, then a year at Fulham, sort of Charlton. I didn't play much, but I was sort of involved in all the games and we were successful. And then, a spell at Reading. And then had 1 year at Brentford with Martin Allen. So got to 36, as I say, 600 games. Absolutely delighted with that. It was great to finish that off, and but after I stopped playing, the knees were just not great shot. And last year I finally went in and had them both replaced. So I have two brand new knees. So I'm back playing tennis. So no football for me, but
Yeah.
I can walk around the golf course and play tennis. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to take you back. You mentioned earlier on about how football was different, when you first started playing. And I know, and I've heard you go on record before about how um, tough that dressing room was that you went into, both physically and mentally. Tell us about that, John.
Incredible dressing room. And then what it was you had a bunch of young guys, mentally strong, fit, talented, determined, ambitious guys that and yeah, it is fierce. Because it was weird because the first thing Steve Coppell did, I mean, Steve Coppell was one of my heroes as a player, and he turns out was my manager at 28, and you're like, wow, Steve Coppell. And that was incredible. But Steve's first job was to get rid of the old guard. You had a lot of older players like Mickey Droy, Jimmy Cannon, Steve Kettridge, Anton Ottolakowski. I mean, George Wood. Um, and that was really his first job, was to identify, look, I'm going to get rid of the older players. I'm going to bring in a load of young players. And what he did was obviously identify Jeff Thomas and John Pemberton from Crewe. We brought in, Andy Gray came from Dulwich Hamlet. He had myself, and we went out on loan and sort of were around the squad, myself and Richard Shaw. But then Mark Bright came from Stoke way, Ian Wright came on trial. We had people like Alex Dyer and, you know, Glenn Hodges and Gary, Gary Thompson. You had older heads like John Humphreys and, Paul Brush. I remember that, that dressing room, Brian Sparrow, and it was just, I don't know, it was, we were all just willing to work hard, play hard. Andy Thorne, I remember Andy Thorne was sort of, he was captain, and we'd all go out and have a drink. And the older players were harsh on the younger players, and it was one of those, you pointed fingers, and you had to do your job and know your role. And Wally Downs was exceptional. What a top coach. He came in. He was phenomenal. You had youngsters like Stan Collymore. I mean, Stan just couldn't really cope, to be fair. It was a brutal experience for poor Stan. But I mean, I was on one side and Eddie was on the other side. And, he had Ian Wright and Mark Bright up front. So, he went off to Southend and found his feet and made his way at the right time. But it really was, sink or swim in those dressing rooms in those days, and especially ours, because no one was nasty, but it was a brutal, harsh environment that the fittest and the strongest survived.
Yeah. Well, having experienced that side of the game, how much did you have to adapt as you later took on the coaching role, dealing with a modern player in the modern game?
Oh, do you know, it's crazy because I kind of had 10 years out of the, when I retired at 36, and then I went straight into Sky Sports and I was doing that. And then, sort of I had 10 years away from the dressing room, and I came back into that Palace first team dressing room, and the environment was just, I mean, the change was incredible. They all had earphones, they're all individuals, got their own agents. The kit man, they're so pampered. They're all their kit laid out for them, and just the food, the diet, the nutrition. They all had iPads. They all had, so you get all your stats and your clips on your iPad, and you get so much information given to you, and the way they were treated and the way they acted, and obviously the money had gone through the roof. So for me, I was really quite shocked in sort of, I don't know how pampered and spoilt they were, in the way they were treated and in the way they acted in a lot of ways. But there was some great lads there with great attitudes and great work ethics and great personalities. But it's chalk and cheese, I think. I mean, some of those players don't even think they like football. Certainly didn't watch football. Just weren't really interested. It picked up their money and went home, which was a real eye opener. But you had the real proper, soldiers like James MacArthur and sort of Mile Jedinak and people like that you just thought, wow, and Joel Ward and then it was a really funny environment to be back in, how it changed so much and the modern footballer. But as you say, us old school players, we do struggle with that. But once you spend enough time, it becomes the norm and it becomes very natural. But you will find that a lot of the old school players and managers, disappearing out of the game, and everything's changed in the way you coach, the way you manage. Um, and ultimately the way you deal with them. I can remember sort of laying into my under 13s, and really telling them some home truths after a game down at Chelsea at Cobham, and sort of trying to lay out the reality of where they are and where they need to be. And you know the head of academy called me in, director of the academy called me in the next week and just sort of spent half an hour sort of saying, well, you can't speak to them like that, and you can't be that harsh on them. And I'm like, if you don't tell them the truth and you don't give them, you know, exactly where they need to be, they sort of wake up one day with this disillusionment of, wow, I thought I was good enough. I thought I was doing the right things. I thought I was on the right track. And I find that really weird the way that works now, because I'd rather look someone in the eye and tell them that, listen, you need to up your game, rather than when you call them in with their parents and tell them we're releasing them and they're in floods of tears and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all, and that's brutal and that's harsh. And that was the hardest thing you have to do as a coach is say, look, we're out of 20 players, we are only keeping three. And you got to tell the other 17 that, they're going to be released, but you're trying to tell them that, stay on the right path, keep your attitude, and you go and play somewhere else because you're a good player. And you sometimes have to release good players. You just can't keep them on. But there's no doubt. I think when we played, we understood the brutality and the cutthroatness of football. Now I think they try and protect them from that, and then the wake up call is when they get released, and it's like, well, that's not right. It's almost like they were, they sort of think I'm going to be this footballer, and then they just sort of hit this brick wall. But it shouldn't happen like that. There should be a pathway where they're talking to him, saying, look, you know, and then they should try and help these kids get other clubs or get further education. There should be some pathways for them to, because all kids, sort of thing. I don't need to do education. I don't need to get a trade. Don't need to get any qualifications because I'm going to be a footballer. So that is something harsh, but it is. I don't know. I suppose it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? I'm not sure how that's ever going to change, but there are a lot of things in place now to try and change that and make that a lot better.
Yeah. When we talk about the modern game, how much would John Salako in his prime be worth on the transfer market today?
Oh God, that's the worst thing ever. Anyone, people say to me, "Oh, John, would you like to be playing today, earning all this money?" I mean, and I'm like, "Well, I can't, so I'm not even going to think about it." So, it's one of those things that is frustrating. Of course, I'd love to be playing today and being part of it. Best thing is like the pitches are magnificent, the treatment, and the superstardom of it all, and the glitz and the glamour that it is now. But yeah, I'd like to, you'd like to think that you'd be right up there. I don't know what will Elise would be going for 60 million. Eze would probably be going for 70, 75 million. I'd like to think could be getting up to those sort of figures and pulling in 200 bags a week. That'd be
Yeah.
nice. I'm not even going to think about it.
I know. Depressing, isn't it?
Money doesn't make you happy. Money doesn't make. Yeah, yeah.
Well, you've got two new knees now, John. Maybe it's time for a comeback.
Oh God, yeah. I was thinking about that. If only I could. Yeah, I wish I could. I think that's the weird thing. I think watching England play, or even just watching the Premier League stuff and the Champions League, and you watch it and you do think, oh, do you know what? It'd be great, wouldn't it? Lace up your boots and get out there. But we've had our day. I'll sometimes put on the DVD and run some old goals and some old clips
Yeah.
and have a little bit of a little jog down memory lane. Is yeah, that's about it now. So it's I'll take trying to get my handicap down and
Yeah.
win the game at tennis. All about the winning. So it's all good. I mean, to be honest, I think that's the one thing you've got to get in touch with and on top of is just where you are. And the reality of it is, look, that was yesterday, and it's not going to come back. So you just got to make some memories going forward.
When we talk about that dressing room, there was something about that side that produced both characters and leaders. And many of you, like we've said, have all gone on to have brilliant, successful second careers. And the most trending name out of that group would be Gareth Southgate, wouldn't it? What was
Well,
he
yeah.
like as a player and as a man? And did you always know that he'll go on to be the manager that he is today?
No, you're crazy. Gareth was probably 15 months younger than me. I think he's 53. Yeah. But not massively talented. He was a right back, gangly, great engine, but just wanted to learn. Was a bright, intelligent, lovely lad, nice family, just a great lad. I mean, he was big mates with Andy Woodman. So there was really two different camps, really. I suppose Richard and I broke in first, and then Gareth came later, more when the big boys had gone. So, the characters, I mean, you got Nigel Martin went on to play, Brighty and Righty, just absolute legends. Jeff Thomas he's nearly a Sir Jeff Thomas now. Some big characters. And then there was that Gareth Southgate side of Chris Coleman. I mean, I leave out Pardew as well. Sort of, and obviously, as I say, Dean Gordon and people like that. But Gareth was a natural leader. Gareth was very calm, was very strong. he was intelligent, and around that 93, 94 was the start of the Premier League. There was more money came in. I think there was sports scientists came in from rugby, and a lot of people came into the game. So nutritionists, psychologists, so everything kind of changed. Everything went up a level, sort of equipment, better physiotherapy, better treatment, better diets, better, everything was better, because there was more money. And certainly, Gareth was at that era where Gareth was the guy that, if you had someone come in to do a presentation, he would be the one that would be taking notes and be there at the end asking questions. And everyone would be like, I'll leave him, we're going, But he took everything on board and used everything he could to make him the best person, best player he could. And he certainly would have taken that into his coaching, into his management. And the one thing you can't, you'd say with Gareth, he gave it everything, and he would work immensely hard. Um, but he was strong. Gareth was fierce. He stood up. Vinnie Jones and Roy Keane. He'd go toe to toe with him in midfield, so never shirked, and certainly
Yeah,
was if you see his nose, that was Vinnie Jones giving him a proper elbow at a derby at Celeste. Nasty, if you're playing up against your Vinnie Jones Fashes and your Dennis Wises in that,
yeah,
you've got to look after yourself, and certainly he could do that. So mentally strong, say everything he's been through. I mean, certainly to take on what I think is the hardest job in football, the England manager's job, and keep it for 8 years and have the success he had, then absolutely incredible. Brilliant. Love Gareth, lovely guy. Look forward to catching up with him and having a beer with him, or a lemonade, I should say. But yeah, hopefully he gets the chance to get a nice job now in club management. But yeah, a lot of strong characters, and that would have defined, growing up, sort of that era under Alan Smith. I'm actually having dinner with Alan Smith tonight, actually, so we'll probably talk all things Gareth Southgate and
yeah,
Andy Woodman doing well at Bromley now. He's got his own little management career, But yeah, a lot of top characters, a lot of brilliant guys, and the principles are all the same, really, coming out of sport. And I think they've identified that. A lot of the rugby players and cricket players go into the city, go into jobs, because they don't get spoilt, or they don't lose their heads with too much dreams and sort of hysteria, really. But footballers need to be a bit more like that, because it's a very short career. And Stevie Cobb was the one that said, football career is just a stepping stone to the rest of your life. So, make the most of it, and then, look to the future and get yourself a trade, get yourself some qualification. There's so much there for players to do. Directors of football, you can be chief execs, but you can go on to be lawyers, accountants, go and work in the city and run companies, and go and enjoy your life and make it as fulfilling, as rewarding as possible. But which a lot of that team are, they're just pushing barriers, which is
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah. During those years at Palace, you were capped 5 times as an England player. What do you remember about being called up for the first time?
Yeah, crazy. I remember last game of the season we were playing Man United at home, and I needed 2 goals to get my goal bonus, and yeah, I was shooting from everywhere, and right in Brighton were going absolutely crazy, but we ended up beating them 3-1, and I got my 2 goals. And went into the summer, and I was just mowing the lawn, and the girlfriend calls out, said, "Oh, John, it's Graham Taylor on the phone for you." I'm like, "Yeah, right." I'm like, sure. Chris Coleman did, they're down a pub messing around. They're like, "Oh, we'll give John a." And I got to the phone. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sure, Z. What do you want?" It's like, "No, no, no, John. It's Graham Taylor, England manager. Just wanted to tell you before anyone else tells you, or you find out any other way. Just wanted to tell you and congratulate you that I've selected you for the England squad and the upcoming Australasia tour." And it's just froze. Just you just can't believe it. And I'm like, there's obviously a pause for a few seconds, and I'm just like, "Wow, thank you, Mr. Taylor, and I look forward to seeing you." And it's like, "Thank you, bye." And just sat there and put the telly on, and back when you had teletext, and put that on, and then it came up, and you're looking at squad, Gary Lineker, sort of Stuart Pearce, Des Walker, and you're like, "Yeah, right." You're like, "Oh my God, this is happening." And it takes a while to settle in, but it's the dream. I've always dreamt big. and I've always enjoyed the big stage, and it's exactly what I was dreaming of, what you're working for. And I was like, right, yeah, come on, let's go do this. And I was just like kid, a kid again, and just, so excited. Um, just couldn't wait, just couldn't come around quick enough to get in that car and get around to Bisham Abbey and meet up with the boys, and yeah, sort of arrive at Bisham Abbey and meet, Tony Adams as your captain, and, sort of Lee Dixon and Stuart Pearce, and you're looking around David Platt and Gary Lineker, and you're like, this is where I want to be. This,
Yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah,
it. This is it. Sort of like, Mark Waters, loved Mark Waters. And so I think I grew up, sort of when I was watching England play, I'd watch John Barnes and Chris Waddle and, sort of Trevor Stevens. And I'm one of those that I used to watch it. And to be honest, I think it's the weirdest thing. England just have never really delivered, what we hope. I mean, 1990 was so special. Gaza is just an absolute, he's the best player we've ever had. I mean, Glenn Hoddle, Gaza. But, Italia 90 was just so magical, the way we played. But I was watching that thinking, I'm going to get in that side. I want to play in that side. I want to be part of that. And when you think, how are you going to get around, sort of Andy Sint and Mark Walters, John Barnes, Chrissy Waddle, Jason Wilcox. And I'm like, don't worry about them. I'm better than that. I can smash this. I think I think you have that self-talk, you have that self-belief, but you watch it and you train and you sort of engage, and you start putting sort of those steps in place. You start putting building those bricks up of that's what I'm going to do. So, and then when it happens, you're ready. You've been there. You've seen it. You've dreamt it, and you've done the work. So just come, let it happen. Unfortunately, to say, I got those 5 caps, and then, actually, the night I got injured, actually saying that was the night I got injured at Leeds. I was going to sign for Bury the next day, and Graham Taylor was there, and I think we had a game against Turkey coming up for the Euro qualifier. So, so it went from sort of everything was falling into place and everything was the way it should be to, sort of sitting in the garden at 3 o'clock in the morning after coming back from the hospital thinking, oh, could be all could be over. So that was kind of crazy.
yeah. We're recording this just a couple of days after the Euros, and obviously much of the talk during the tournament was about the left back position. Luke Shaw wasn't quite fit, and Trippier was playing there. And of course, over your career, you've played in front of many good left backs, including Chris Powell at Charlton. You mentioned that you finished, you was there towards the end of your career as well. Who was your favourite left back to play in front of, John?
Richard Shaw, um, at club level, and we shared room for 10 years. We so similarities. We came through the academy and as players, and then he even came to Coventry. So, I can't think how many games we played together, but Shawsey was brilliant. He was such a great defender. And again, he was right-footed, but he worked on his left foot, and he good players can adapt. And back then we worked as pairs, and you worked together, and he was quite happy to give me the ball, didn't want to come around me, and the way we played, he didn't need to come around me. So it was get it up, give it to me, support, and I'll do the bit taking it forward. But Stuart Pearce was magnificent, and Stuart Pearce just, we walk, sort of, we were walking out at Wembley, and Stuart came up to me and he just said, listen, I defend, you attack. I don't need you to help me. So you just stay up there and you do your bit. And that was brilliant. That's what he wanted. Stuart was a proper warrior, soldier, and he did his job. Whereas most fullbacks would be going double up, come and help me. It was the opposite, but what a player Chrissy Powell was, by the way. He was a fabulous left back, and the interesting thing was, I mean, I played left and right because I think one thing Graham Taylor, Stevie Copper was the one that taught me to be two-footed, so I could come back and cross it right-footed, go down the line. So you don't always have to beat your man; you can check back and stick the ball in. but it made you could play on both sides. So you could swap wings, you could go on the right, go on the left, and switch it. But just going back to what you said about the Euros, not going with a natural left side player. Do you know what? One thing I didn't understand was obviously, look, Steve, I was a centre forward, and Stevie Coppell came and said, "Look, I've got right and bright. Do you fancy playing on the left?" And I said, "Just give me a shirt. Give me a shirt. I'll
Yeah,
play anywhere."
yeah,
You know, and then there were times when I played. So in the semi-final against Liverpool at Villa Park, I was left wing back. So Stevie Coppell came and said, right is injured. We're going to go with a back five. We're going to go. I want you to play left wing back. Not a problem. Work on it. Work on his shape. Left wing back. You can get forward, do your job back. Yeah, I played. I can remember playing left back a few times. Played up against um, Malcolm Crosby and Franz Carr. And I turned into this animal. I turned into it's so weird when as a defender, I became that guy who was looking at snarling, saying, you know, I'm gonna, and it was really weird. And it's funny how you do that because you sit in the dressing room and you watch the manager say to our fullbacks, the first chance you get, you stick him in row Z. You, you go and give him a proper whack and see if he likes
yeah,
that. And I'm thinking, they must be in the other dressing room. They must be saying that
yeah,
about me. They must be like, the first chance you get, you put Salako in row Z and see if he fancies it today. You know, like, and those were the
yeah,
days when you could have two of those and the referee would go, right, come on, Stuart, come on, Julian Dix. If you do that again, I might have to think about booking you. That was when you were,
yeah,
your foot would be hanging off and the referee would be going, oh, okay, let's calm it down. No booking in sight. And but yeah, I mean, I didn't understand why Saka couldn't play on the left. I don't even know. I mean, Cole Palmer, I don't know. He's just in too rich a vein of form to put him left back, I think, and he was too important in that central role. But Saka left wing back all day. I don't know. I think the back three was always the way to go. Mainly. So there's a few things that you sort of look at, and you have to be in part of the party to understand exactly why decisions are made. And sometimes you make certain calls. But I just look at, we should have taken a natural left side, either Tyreek Mitchell, and there was a young lad at Ipswich that absolutely smashed it last year. That he's young, I say 23, 24, but do you know, I just thought, yeah, we should have taken a balanced left sider or just talk Saka into playing there.
yeah,
Anyway, there were certain lessons lost, there were certain things missed. We got to a final. Gareth's done an incredible job, and we love him, and just so grateful and indebted to Gareth for the fantastic job he's done. And I think it's such a hard job, and everyone's easy to jump on the bandwagon and say they can do better or they could have done things differently. But he did it his way.
yeah,
And I think he'll go down in the record books as not, if not the all-time greatest England manager. He'll certainly, his reputation will grow as years go by. But it wasn't always great to watch, and you can't always get that combination. So
yeah,
it's so difficult. It's so difficult. But just to see Gareth as England manager for 8 years and do so well at World Cup finals and European finals is it's just incredible. It's just incredible. So proud of him.
yeah. You mentioned about being kicked into row Z. Who was the hardest defender that you ever came up against?
Um, there were some tough guys. I mean, Stuart Pearce, Julian Dix. At right back, there was a lad called Kevin Muscat who was a complete nugget, and he was a nasty piece of work. But right backs weren't actually too bad. They were strong. I mean, Lee Dixon and Gary Neville were the best fullbacks. They were fantastic, and you were trying to stop them, and they were so hard to beat. Gary Charles, remember Nottingham Forest, what a player he was. Glenn Johnson, what a player. I mean, they were tough, they were fast. There was an old school when I first came, when I was 18 against Stevens at Millwall, Rhino. He was horrible. There was a time when I first broke through and I was a youngster, people would snarl and look at you and, try and intimidate you and, you know, leave a bit on you. But a lot of the good players didn't really bother too much with that. If they had a chance to smash you, they would. Tackle hard and fair that was Stewart and Lee. Yeah, there was good players. Gary Kelly at Leeds. I mean, there was so many good players. Really, there was a lot of good right backs that I came up against. Roland Nilsson, who I played with at Coventry, then played against at Sheffield Wednesday. What a player he was. It just always seemed to be quick, strong, good right backs and left backs. But
Yeah.
I think Julian and Stuart, who I didn't get to play against that much, luckily. We had a lad called Mark Dennis. Who I think he's still got the record for the most sending offs ever. He was on it. He played for us for a little while, and playing up against him in training was quite scary because he was man and ball doesn't pass. It was that era.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, you little so and so. You're not taking the piss out of me today. I'm telling you, yeah. So, and that was just training, and it's nice,
Yeah.
scary. Yeah, I mean, that era of intimidation and strong tackling, it's amazing, really, when you look back. Keen. It was that you boss midfield, but you know, you went out and earned the right to win the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Well, John, mate, we've loved seeing you as a player, as a coach, and in the media. What's next for John Salako?
Do you know what? I mean, that's great question. I think I really enjoyed working with Sky. I got my UEFA A badge. I mean, I was when I got injured, I got my badges, so I got my coaching badge back then, and then I turned that into a UEFA A. And I'd say doing the coaching, I loved the opportunity to manage, which just never really came. Obviously, I had a little dalliance with the coaching at Palace. But really now it's just real life stuff. I enjoy doing some of the media stuff. Hope I'll do more down the line. I'd like to do a little bit more with Palace. But for me, it's just real life stuff. I've got a couple of companies. I do like a lot of what I do is in around property. It's finance, property, and technology, really. The companies I'm involved with. So really, what I'm loving is just engaging with business owners, with top business people, and helping them with their businesses. And I'd love to help players build property portfolios down the line. Help them identify land and build their own houses, build a portfolio, so that by the time they're 35, 36, they've got a nice portfolio, and they've got that that growth for the rest of their lives, and they can then just concentrate on whatever they enjoy doing and whatever they like doing. But you will gravitate to doing. It's always nice if you can be your own boss. So that's all I dream of is really waking up in the morning, being my own boss, and being able
Yeah,
to sort of do what I enjoy doing. That way you don't ever have to work another day in your life. So
yeah.
that's what I'm working hard on. So just trying to be grateful and getting up in the morning, and hopefully the sun shines. A bit of weather here would be great.
So if anyone's listening right now and they want to contact you about any of those things, John, I know you're on LinkedIn. And where's a good place for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is fantastic. LinkedIn is really a wonderful tool, great tool, and I'm finding a lot of success with that because obviously you put yourself forward. I think that's the one thing, people have sort of come to know is just life moves on and you do different things.
Yeah,
And I really enjoy engaging in the business world and in the real world, as I call it, and just meeting nice people and seeing what we can do together and trying to help people. And hopefully, it's reciprocal and, you build relationships and work together. And LinkedIn is arguably just a very, very easy, straightforward business platform where I'm
yeah.
meeting a lot of really nice people. And it's been fantastic. So yeah, I need to spend more time and using that.
Well, brilliant. We'll make sure that your LinkedIn profile is in the description below. So feel free to reach out to John if you've got anything exciting for him to take a look at. We're going to take a very quick break before coming back to asking John the signature from the club questions.
Oh,
So, John, as you know, as a business, we're all about official signed memorabilia. So these last few questions are all memorabilia related. Are you ready?
yep.
Well, John, have you ever asked anyone for their autograph before? And if so, who?
Absolutely. I ask anyone for autographs. I think I met Tom Cruise in London. Tom Hanks, I will go up to him and take pictures, and I will get them to sign something for me or for my daughter. I think Ollie Murs was a big favourite of my daughter's, so I got something signed for her and a picture. Robbie Williams, oh my God, London's brilliant. You just bump into people, it's surreal. But I'm a football geek as well. I will go up and have pictures with Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry, and Patrick Vieira are my gods.
I've heard you mention before because obviously you've signed thousands of autographs over your lifetime, and one of your nicknames is Johnny Salad. Is that right? Because of how your autograph looks, is that right?
Yeah, my autograph looked like salad, but I don't know why Palace fans have always just called me Salad Boy. They've just yeah, it's weird and it's stuck.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned your England appearances. I'm sure that you've kept some souvenirs from that experience. What memorabilia do you own? And if so, what's your favourite piece?
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces that are here. I don't know if I can actually show you them if I pan onto them. So on the wall here is my
Yeah.
England. Oh, what is that? England Germany shirt. That's my England shirt, my debut shirt. And then
Wow.
that's a Brazil shirt from the 2002 World Cup. And there's my German shirt on the end. So when I played against the unified German side at Wembley. But the Brazil shirt is I was a roving reporter for the BBC at the Japan Korea World Cup in 2002. And that shirt has actually got Rivaldo, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Roberto Carlos, and Janino on it. 5 signatures I got before. I was a roving reporter, so I bought the shirt, had it on under my top. And what happened is I was in the mix zone, and you weren't allowed to do autographs. And I was getting them to sign it. I was pulling up my shirt and getting them to sign it. And then this steward, spotted me and threw me out. But I'd really got the 5 signatures. I would have liked to, yeah, I would like to got a few more, but that's very special. But
Yeah.
obviously,
Did you swap shirts much, John? Did you pick up many of your opposition shirts?
you know what? I've given a lot of them away. Back in those days, we actually didn't really swap shirts too much. I think the one I loved, and one of my favorite players was Ryan Giggs, and I really wanted his shirt. I got an Alan Shearer one, but over the years, I've ended up giving them away, and
Yeah.
I've given a lot of the shirts away. But yeah, I think that's one thing I wish I'd have done more is swap shirts and kept them. But I
Yeah.
yeah, didn't, unfortunately.
Last question. If you could have anyone's autograph, dead or alive, who would you have and why?
Oh wow. Oh wow. That is I think Nelson Mandela um or Muhammad Ali. I think Mandela was just a great man. He's just right up there with everything he stood for, and he dedicated his life, and has left a legacy and will always be, a truly great man that I got to live in my time. And funny enough, I was at the premiere in Leicester Square of Mandela when the news came through that he died. Um, but incredible man. But growing up, Pele and Muhammad Ali, they would be the two. That would be probably my 3 dinner guests. Maybe Elvis. Just yeah, Elvis. We'll have a sing song with Elvis. Loved Michael
But that would
Jackson.
be some table, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, I've sort of did it. I need a table for 10 really to be able to fit in all those greats. Yeah, to sing along with
Yeah.
Michael Jackson and Elvis, and then sporting wise, Muhammad Ali and Pele. But Maradona was the best player I saw. I didn't really get to see Pele, but looking back at what he did in earlier years, but Muhammad Ali was just the greatest of them all, wasn't he? But I mean, when Tyson, Mike Tyson came onto the scene, though, in the early years, whoa, he was
Wow.
something special as well, wasn't he? But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, incredible. But yeah, my dinner for 3 has become a dinner for 15, isn't it?
But it sounds good. I'll definitely come along to that dinner as well, John. John, it's been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Before we let you go, do you have any closing thoughts?
Not really. Sort of just obviously finished the Euros, which hasn't gone our way, but I'm looking forward to the next England manager. It's going to be exciting. It feels weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not having Gareth, but I'm excited. I personally would hunt Jurgen Klopp down. I love him so much. I think he'd be a perfect fit, although he's a German. I know I want an Englishman, but he's an honorary Englishman now. So what I would do is make him manager. I'm looking forward to the next chapter for England, and obviously looking forward to the new Premier League season, and hoping we can hang on to one or two of our players, if not Eze and Lise, at least Lerma, Decore, Sam Johnson, and some of the others, so we can build on that. So it's looking forward to an exciting Premier League season. So, yeah, it was a great season last season, and it's been a fantastic Euros. So looking forward to Olympics coming around next. It's been an incredible summer of sport, hasn't it? So
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely brilliant. I'm a complete, sport geek. So, I just love it. So brilliant. It's been a great summer, but thanks for having me on, and maybe get on again sometime.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, John. I'm going to collect up all your social media and profiles. They'll be in the description below, so make sure you go and give John a follow. And thanks so much for your time, John. It's been a real pleasure, mate.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. I'll speak to you.
Thanks.